really get clear on why you want to do this. Are you doing it for your own self-significance or self-validation? Are you doing it to prove something? Or are you truly doing this in the energy of love and pure intentions and the spirit of service to others? We are heroes and dreamers.
Welcome to Empowering Vibez, the show that supports you to create an extraordinary life. My name is Hannah Wiss, and my guest today is the incredibly talented powerhouse Melanie Peralta. I am so excited and unbelievably grateful to have such an inspiring, powerful guest here on the show today. Melanie, welcome to Empowering Vibez, and thank you so much for spending your time with us.
Thank you so much for having me, Hannah. I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you.
You're welcome. Same here. So I would like to start with, we see you today so beautifully merging the world of music with the world of personal development. And I would like to start with your personal story, because you first spent like a decade in the music industry, then you switched over to personal development, and then you kind of finally listened to your calling and merged the two fields, which is very, very unique.
Right. So, I mean, it's such a long story. It really is. I'll give you the condensed version to the best of my ability. But essentially, I've been singing and writing music since I was a little girl. And well, when I was younger, my dad realized that I had this voice. And he was like, oh my God, my daughter can sing and she wants to sing. So my dad took so much initiative. I always tell people, like here in America, there's this Latina singer. She actually passed away, but she's very famous here. Her name is Selena. And in her story, her dad sees her talent and then he takes her on the road with her and her siblings. And my dad was very similar to Selena's dad in a sense where he found out that I had a voice. And next thing you know, he's booking me to sing at everything he can find. I sang at church carnivals and lowrider shows and singing contests and just any stage my dad could find, he would put me on. Anything. A parade, my daughter singing at the parade. And so I just had this programming of performing from very young, and I loved it. I loved to sing. I loved to perform. And because I started doing that so young, I got into the music industry when I was like 13. Wow. At a pretty high level. I was working with Atlantic Records, and I started working with Sony later down the line. But long story short, I was working with Atlantic Records, living in Atlanta, Georgia, and I was on the verge of getting a record deal with Atlantic. There was conflict and all this stuff. Music politics happened and the whole deal fell apart. All the music that I made with them, gone. I wasn't able to do anything with it. And it was really devastating. Oh, yeah. At the time, I was just a teenager. I had left home. I'm originally from Arizona in the U.S., and that was all the way across the country for me to go over there and be away from my friends and be away from my family. And my whole life was just devoted to making music and pursuing a record deal, which at the time was like the thing to do. Not anymore now that the social media has taken over the way that it has, but back then it was. And so when that fell apart, I eventually, after that, my dad was so upset because I had a manager at the time, and it was just falling apart. It was just this mess. And I felt called to fire my manager. And so I did. And he was like my link to the music industry at a high level. He was the one who connected me with Atlantic Records. He was the one who connected me with all these people. And so when I fired him, I was like, oh my God, my dad's like, are you sure this is what you want to do? I'm like, yeah. To be really honest with you, Hannah, at the time, even though I was young, I was a teenager, I was like 16 years old. I was not living great lifestyle outside of pursuing my music. I was raving every weekend. I was in high school. I was partying a lot. I was blackout drunk all the time. I was taking ecstasy and acid, and I was just in this rave world, and I was exploring, and I was a wild teenager. I really was. And a lot of that stemmed from both of my parents were actually drug addicts when I was younger. My mom was a meth addict for most of my life, and my dad was a drug addict and alcoholic for a very long time too. And my dad actually raised me all by himself. He ended up going to prison, and when he went to prison, he came out and he had this daughter to take care of. He changed his whole life around, but my mom didn't. So my dad raised me all by himself. He completely turned his life around. He stopped doing drugs and everything. He still had a little bit of a drinking problem for a little bit, but he always did the best that he could. And so he is the foundation of my whole entire being, that man. Like, so much of who and how I am today is because of him in so many ways. And so he had no idea that I was raving and doing drugs and doing all this stuff back then. He just thought, oh, my daughter, my perfect little singing daughter. He had no idea. And so that night I actually went to a rave, and I was on a lot of drugs. I did acid and all types of stuff. And I had this message come through. And at the time, it just felt like the voice of God. And it just told me it's time to fire Curtis. And that's who my manager was at the time. And that idea would have never been my own. Like, that wasn't even a thought in my mind. To fire him? What? It sounded crazy. But I felt this voice of God. I remember telling my friend, like, dude, God just spoke to me. And my friend didn't believe in God at the time. She was like, you're insane. I'm like, she's like, you're on drugs. Shut up. I'm like, no, I swear. Anyways, it hit me in my core and my soul, and I knew that that's what I needed to do. And the next day, I'm home with my dad, and he has no idea I was at the rave last night. And I'm like, I had a conversation with God, and I know that I need to fire Curtis. And he was just like, really? Is this what you want to do? And I'm like, yes, I know that this is what I need to do. And it was what I needed to do 100% for many reasons. So I did. And after that, I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? This was my lifeline in the music industry. And long story short, a week later, I get a phone call from one of the producers that I had worked with through him, that I wrote a song with. And he said, I played your song for Sony, and the A&R there would like to meet you. Can you fly to LA? Can you come to LA next weekend? I just happened to be going to LA already to go to a rave and visit a friend and go to a rave. So I was like, yeah, I'm actually already going to be in LA next weekend. Let's do it. So we set up the meeting. I go to LA. At this point, I'm like 18. So this was kind of like over some years, right? At this point, I'm 18. I go to the meeting, and it turns out into being a 6-month music deal. So I moved to LA. I have this songwriting deal for like 6 months. And me moving to LA was the first time I was ever actually alone, Hannah. Because when I moved to Atlanta, I was never alone. I had my team, I had my manager, I had this whole team around me all the time. And I wasn't by myself. But when I moved to LA, that was the first time I was ever actually by myself. I didn't have a manager, I didn't have a team, I didn't have my dad, I didn't have any, like, I knew like 2 people out there. And that was it. And so being alone away from my world, it really woke me up to my shadow. And my shadow really started to show itself when I got into loneliness, and when I got into, you know, a lifestyle that didn't validate my personality constantly, or I was just like, I started to fall into some really, really unhealthy patterns. I had already started to like lose value of my morals in a sense with the partying just some of the things that I ended up, seeing or experiencing or getting into. And it got to the point where when I lived in LA, I was entertaining the idea of being a sugar baby. Like, that's how far I had gotten off my moral track. And I went as far to like create a profile looking for a guy, because I'm like, women in LA do this all the time, it's fine, and all this stuff, And I had a boyfriend at the time who was from here in Arizona, and it was actually my son's dad, because I have a 7-year-old. And he came out to LA, and at some point when he was visiting me, an email popped up on my computer of like a sugar daddy match or something. And he was like, "Who are you?" And when he said that to me, Hannah, it was like, you're right. Who am I? Like, I'm willing to, like, not only was I in that, but I was going to cheat on him. That was another issue of mine, is that I had infidelity issues growing up. I was not a faithful girl growing up. And so much of that came from my trauma from not having my mom in my life, because I felt like I was always not enough, because I would always say, why doesn't she just quit drugs to be my mom? Like, am I not enough for her? Or I just felt this like trauma of like insignificance from that whole situation with my mom. And it led to me constantly seeking love and validation through men, essentially. And so I had a really hard time just being faithful. And so he was just like, what the hell are you doing? Like, who are you? And I was just like, oh my God, yeah, you're right. Who am I? And funny enough, months before, here I am being an unfaithful woman, even before I moved to LA. And I went on a date. I got asked out on a date by this pro baseball player here in Arizona. And of course I said yes, even though I had a boyfriend. And so I went, and it was so funny because now in hindsight, I can see that he was so conscious. He was mature. He was conscious. He was a really, really great man. And he could see right through me. I could tell that he could see right through me, like, oh girl, you have a lot of work to do. So he, like, at the end, we went on that one date and I never saw him again. But at the end of the date, like, I swear he was an angel in my life. He just gave me this look and he was like, I think you should read this book. You would really, really benefit from reading this book. And I'm like, at the time I didn't even read. I'm like, okay, sure, whatever. So then, so he refers me the book, The 7 Spiritual Laws of Success by Deepak Chopra. And I'm like, I write it in my phone, forget it, never think that I'm going to read it ever. But when I got into that state of emergency, of moral emergency, and, my partner just found out that I'm like looking for a sugar daddy and I'm in this space and I'm like, I'm not proud of who I am. I'm not proud of the woman that I am. I'm not proud of the decisions that I'm making. And I am like, who the hell am I? I need something. And I remembered the book and I looked in my phone and I found it and I pulled it up and I read it. And that was my first step into personal development. That was my first taste of consciousness or spirituality, because I originally grew up Catholic, but we didn't really go to the church a lot. My nana was a hardcore Catholic. My dad was not. And so it was nothing that I had ever heard before. It was nothing it was just so new to me and it felt so good. It felt so right. And I practiced these 7 laws that I learned and it just changed my life forever. And it put me into this personal development, like, rabbit hole. And I immersed myself in my apartment for like a whole month. I did not leave my place unless I had to go to the grocery store or unless it was like a vital errand that needed to be ran. And I obsessed with personal development and I dove into everything. I started reading Anatomy of the Spirit by Carolyn Mace, which taught me about the emotional body connection, that your emotions affect your body. And it was divine timing. And this was really funny because I bought that book a long time ago when I was like in this really catty competition with some girl who she was reading. And I noticed my boyfriend would always like be interested. He was always like looking at her Instagram and stuff. And I'm like, oh, I could read a book. And I like went to the bookstore and bought this book, and I picked it and never read it. And then later it was the book that I needed. So funny, because I had manifested my own disease through being such an unfaithful, unloyal woman. And I was experiencing excruciating pain during intercourse. And I had no idea why. And I went to all the doctors and they said, nothing's wrong with you. You're fine. And I'm like, no, something is wrong. I know it. Like, this is like the most excruciating pain ever. There has to be something wrong. And they're like, there's nothing. And when I read that book, there's this chart in there. That book is brilliant. I highly recommend it. Anatomy of the Spirit by Carolyn Mace. And in the chart, it talks about the physical pain or the disease or the ailments that you can receive in different areas of the body based off of the emotions and the qualities and characteristics of the personality. And I read in that book, and at the time I was constantly experiencing like chronic UTIs and this excruciating pain during intercourse. And I look in the book, and in the chart, I'm like looking for like bladder and like, you know, like sacral area and stuff. And literally the correlation to dis-ease or pain or anything over there was infidelity, shame, guilt, all of these things that I was definitely doing to myself. And I was like, oh my God, I've been living in so much shame and guilt and secrecy and all these lies that I've been ordering this energy inside of my body, and now it's affecting me physically. And I had no idea. And so then in that book too, she talks about the power of healing, of self-healing through changing the personality and changing the character and changing the emotional states. And I dove deeper into that, and I found Dr. Joe Dispenza. I found Dr. Bruce Lipton, and I am, like I said, I immersed myself. I was watching YouTube videos and reading and all this stuff for hours and hours and hours a day. And when I heard Dr. Joe Dispenza's story, I started practicing my own healing meditation every single day in the shower. And I vowed to never be unfaithful again. I vowed to be a loyal, honest woman of integrity. And I decided that I was truly going to change who I was. And I did. And not only did I change my character, but I changed my lifestyle. And I started meditating and I started eating clean. I started shopping at the farmer's market every week and eating local organic food. And my vibration went from here to here in literally like 30 days. And here's how I know. It's because I'm like, okay, my boyfriend was going to come and visit in 1 month. And if I've been experiencing this excruciating pain during intercourse, and it's actually because of this, then let me do this healing for the next month. Let me do this healing meditation. Let me change who I am. Let me release my shame, and let me release my guilt. Let me eat better and all this stuff. And then when he visits, I'm sure we'll be intimate, and that's when I'll know if this has been working. He comes and visits LA, and we get intimate. The pain was gone. I had been experiencing this pain for like 4 or 5 months. So for it to just vanish without a trace, and it never came back. And you know what else vanished? My chronic UTIs. It all gone. I was constantly having a UTI I became, and a lot of the antibiotics didn't even work for me anymore. Like amoxicillin didn't even work for me anymore because I had taken so much of it. I'd become like immune to it, you know? And so I was just like in shock. I was like, it was like my life proof, you know? And ever since then, I just kept diving deeper, learned about sacred geometry and universal law and everything there is to learn in this new space of human existence and what it really is all about and how it really operates and everything. And I just never turned back, ever. But the funny thing is that even though I learned all of that information and healed myself and changed my own life, I never planned on sharing what I knew, ever. It was not a desire to share and teach and all of that. Never even thought about it. I was just living it. I was just living it. I was just incorporating it in my own life. And it wasn't until my boyfriend ended up moving to LA eventually. And then we ended up getting pregnant with my son. And it wasn't until my son was born that I felt the calling to share what I knew, to share what I learned, to share what helped me and what healed me. Because that is when I realized, holy crap, this is how the world is created, through us. And can you imagine if I had my son as that version of me? He wouldn't be set up for success mentally, emotionally, consciously, spiritually, physically, all of that. And I'm like, that's what's happening out here. All of these broken, disempowered, traumatized people having children, and this is how the pattern is being shaped. This is what's happening. I must go and share with women what I know. And at that time, the universe was saying, yeah, girl, you better. Because all of these women kept writing me, women that I didn't even know, Hannah. And they were telling me their life story and pouring into me. And I'm like, why are these women reaching out to a complete stranger? And I'm like, because they don't have anyone to talk to. They don't have community. They don't have a mentor. They don't have a guide. They're looking for one, Melanie. Go be it. Spirit was telling me, go. And I'm like, at that time, I left the music industry. I was a stay-at-home mom. I didn't have any money of my own anymore because my son's dad was the one that was working full-time and I wasn't. And Spirit said, throw a women's event. You need to throw a women's event and teach these women what you know and create a safe space for them. And immediately I said, nope, I'm not doing that. That's a nice idea, but no way. I have never thrown an event in my entire life. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm a singer-songwriter. No, that's a lot. It sounds like a lot. I was already overwhelmed just by the idea, and I rejected the idea. Women kept writing me. The tug was on my soul, and I'm driving down the street one day. I'm going to my dad. I'll never forget this day. And Spirit plops the message into me again. You need to throw this event. And I felt it just like I felt the voice of God at the rave. I felt it again. And it was like, you must. You know, it was like a command, it felt like. And I was just like, I felt it so deeply in my core. And I said, I'm driving and I'm like, fine. I'm like yelling. I start yelling in my car. It reminds me of like a Jim Carrey movie moment for some reason. And I was just like, fine. Okay. I'm going to do it. Fine. All right. Okay, I'll figure it out and I'm going to do it. And I went to my dad's and I'm like, I'm throwing a women's event. And I'm like, what? What the heck are you talking? I'm like, I kept saying my event. Yeah, I'm my event. I'm going to throw my event. I kept talking about it. And long story short, I was just completely fueled and pulled by Spirit. It was so beyond me, Hannah, truly. And I just had this drive in me that I never had. Like, it felt like it was just this new force that was just moving through me. And motherhood had everything to do with that. And I created a GoFundMe account. And I told my story and I shared my mission and I told people what I wanted to do and why I wanted to do it. And people donated. And I mean, it was my first time ever throwing events. So I was not wise about, I rented a venue that I should have never paid for my very first event. Let's just say that. It was like $1,000 for like 2 hours. I would have never done that now. But I didn't know any better back then. And this venue was beautiful and I wanted it to be beautiful. And I raised about $500 with my GoFundMe. And then over the holidays, my family all pitched in and made up the rest of the money for me to pay for my venue. And so I paid for my venue. I literally used my government food stamp card to pay for the food at my event because my partner, he wasn't very supportive at the time. He was just like, I was like, I want to throw this event. And he was like, well, who's going to pay for that? Because I'm not. And I'm like, well, I'm going to figure it out. So when it came to the food stamp card, I told him, because I usually would use that for our groceries. And I said, hey, I'm going to use my food stamp card this month for my event. We're going to have to pay for groceries out of pocket, you know? And he was okay with that. So I paid for the food with my food stamp card. I had a couple really inspiring friends who came. I invited to be speakers. And I had a friend who was a DJ who came, and I had a mimosa bar, and you would have never known it was my first event. It was so good. I was so proud of it. And it was a success. And we had 32 women show up to the very first one. And it was called, I just called it it was the inaugural women's brunch. and it was a good turnout. And I was like, cool, this is nice. Like, I'll do this again. Like, sure, I'll do another one next year. Not thinking anything of it. I wasn't even in business entrepreneur mind at all. I never had to deal with business in the music industry because I had a manager and I only just got to write and be creative. I didn't have to focus on anything business ever. And so I wasn't thinking like that. I wasn't like, oh, this is a business. I was like, this was a cool event. I'll throw another one next year. Long story short, barely any marketing. Like, I didn't have a community. I didn't even have an Instagram page or a Facebook page at the time. Next year rolls around. I throw the event again. We tripled our guest count in the second year. That was almost 100 women. And I was like, whoa. I'm like, holy moly. Like, I have something. Like, this is something. What is this? This is like, because this was in 2016. And this was right before the popular, our generation's feminist movement had started. So all the women empowerment groups and everything, it wasn't a thing yet. It wasn't there yet. And so it was like so new to everybody. And it was seemingly the only place for it, like in where I live. And so women just gravitated towards it. And it was after that second year where I was like, I have something. Like, this could be a thing. I still wasn't thinking it could be a business. I was like, this could be a nonprofit. This could be a nonprofit organization. This is great. So that's when I started taking it seriously, and I had some friends help me. And long story short, I started doing that event every year, and it grew to hundreds of women. It just grew exponentially, and I was just learning along the way. Honestly, it wasn't very profitable because I was not business mindset oriented, and I lost a lot of money along the way, but I learned a lot of lessons along the way, going from 32 women to hundreds of women in just a few years. And actually, 2020 would have been the 5th annual women's brunch, but COVID hit, and that didn't happen. So in that, 4 or 5 years, technically it was 4 years because we started in 2016, but in that 4 years of me throwing these events, my company was called Woman to Woman. And the second woman had the word womb in it, WOMB. And that was just symbolic for the sacred, nourishing, safe, supportive, growth promoting atmosphere that I would create in these spaces. And I started to do more. So I would do my annual event, but then I would host free workshops every single month that I would personally facilitate, and I would teach, and all these women would come. And so I became a teacher and a coach and a mentor, just very organically. And then later down the line, I decided that I actually wanted to create my own coaching program, and I did. And it just grew quickly. It grew really quickly with me not having a single clue of what I was doing, just figuring it out as I went. And 2020 hit. I wasn't able to do my event, but Spirit had other plans for me because it was the top of 2020 when I got recruited to come and be a coach for Tony Robbins and Dean Graziosi. And so I did that, and that took over, my life and my time during that. And it also freed up, it brought in some good money, and it freed up a lot of other things. And I was like, well, I can't throw my live events because we're in the peak of a pandemic. So that's when I took the time and started recording the Moving Mantra Project. Because during that time, even though I had left the music industry, music never left me. I was still a singer-songwriter in my soul. And throughout all those years of me falling up, I had separated from my son's dad, and I went through all these things, these major life changes. And yes, my son just woke up. And so I would write my own songs. I would write these moving mantras for myself. I would write them in the shower. And they were just my own medicine, Hannah. Same thing with moving mantras. I never planned on sharing them. I promised that. I told myself they were just for me. Like always, Spirit had other plans. Spirit said, you need to start sharing these. So I did. I started sharing them on social media, and I did 25 weeks of hashtag Monday Moving Mantra. And it became a thing. So whenever I would speak and I would do my conferences and I would, be a presenter somewhere, it was like, sing a mantra, sing a mantra. So it became my signature. And I sang the mantra. I sang the mantras, and they were a thing now. So in 2020, I was with some of my friends from the music industry, and they were like, Mel, sing us one of those mantras. And so I did, and they were just like, why are we not recording these? We need to be recording these mantras, And so I was like, let's do it. So we did. So 2020 was the year of Tony Robbins and moving mantras. Wow. Yeah, and here we are now.
This is so beautiful. You're literally like an example for kind of like an awakening, and how this whole world of personal growth, spirituality can literally change a person's life, and just turn everything around. And
yeah.
Also that it's not always just candy and bright pink glittery. It's, you have to look at your shadows, you have to look at the dark things, you have to do the shadow work. But that, if you do that work, you can literally make your dreams come true and find your passion and pursue your own unique path. And it's so beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a journey. It really, really was. And I never thought I would be here. Had you told me 5 years ago that this is what I would be doing, I would have just been like, yeah, right. Never believed you.
You already talked a little bit about the power of music, and I was just wondering if you would share with our audience how music and binaural beats and sound bathing and mantras, how can they support us on our growth journey?
Well, sound healing is such an ancient practice. It's, we talk about these new age medicines or these alternative medicines, and they're actually the original medicines. And sound and voice and singing and chanting and mantras have been used for forever by the ancients and our ancestors. And the ancients knew the power of sound. The ancients knew the power of frequencies. And essentially, sound frequencies and vibration have such a profound effect on the molecular structure of water. So depending on the tone, depending on the frequency, it could either bring harmony to the water or it could bring chaos to the water. And there's scientific studies out there. I can never pronounce the man's name. I never want to butcher his name, but there's a scientist who actually studied this, and he studied the effects of sound on water molecules. And he saw that when it was beautiful harmony, very specific frequencies, that the water would create like the shape of a snowflake, this perfect geometric pattern. And when it was exposed to like heavy metal, rock, screamo music of a certain frequency and tone, the water would get all chaotic and it would have no harmony or there would be no pattern. And so we are mostly made up of water. And so music affects us in a very, very similar type of way, the exact type of way, actually. And so frequencies have the power to put us in harmony on a molecular and cellular level, depending on the frequencies that you're listening to. So now we've all heard of Hertz frequencies, and there's very specific Hertz frequencies that affect different, chakra centers and things like that. And so that's when you realize the power of sound on water and that we're water, it's really one and the same. But another thing too is when it comes to the mantra, the message. So very specific frequencies like binaural beats and isochronic tones, they also put you in an altered brainwave state, different brainwave states. They'll put you in, the restorative state. They'll put you in the theta state, which is the imagination state, depending on the frequency. So it'll put you in an altered brainwave state, which allows the subconscious mind to absorb the chant, the message, or the mantra even deeper. And so when you blend all of these things together, the frequencies with the mantra, it's putting you in this harmony that you may not have been able to achieve if you were just listening to your average songs and sounds and music. And I mean, I'm afraid that the people who run and rule this world, they're very aware of the power of music, very aware of the power of music and the influence of the messages, aka the mantras. They may not sound like mantras, but they still are a mantra of some sort, whether it's disempowering to people or the culture. And music has unfortunately been really utilized in unhealthy, inhumane, for my personal opinion, ways, and has manipulated our culture so much. And it has great influence on society and people and the younger generations. And what we're seeing now is a rise, just due to the rise in consciousness. We're seeing that show up through the music that's being made now. And that is exactly what the Moving Mantra Project is. And one of my goals with the Moving Mantra Project was to not only create music that was actually truly medicinal, because in the production of it, my producer is profound. In the production of it, there is Hertz frequencies and binaural beats and isochronic tones and nature sounds, but it also has a pop culture twist, and it sounds like popular music. So when you hear it, you don't realize that this music is actually intentionally designed to be medicinal. You're not realizing that that's what it's doing to you, but that's exactly what it's doing to you, because all the other music is doing something to you too, whether you realize it or not. Because people say, oh, it's just music. Not just music. There's a reason why we use music in school to learn things. There's a reason why the ABCs is a song. There's a reason why they teach you things through songs, because they know that the subconscious mind speaks the language of emotion. So anything that the subconscious, that's why you can remember a song. You can learn a song and you can't even remember what you had for dinner last week on Thursday, but I still remember the Color Purple song that I learned in kindergarten, and I'll never forget it. Because songs, so the lyric is the thought, and then the melody is the emotion. So music is the perfect blend of head and heart coherence, the head and the heart working together. And when the head and the heart work together like that, that's when the messages get deeply embedded within us. So that's why the messages in the music are so important. They're so important. But when we don't know that and we're unconsciously listening, that's when we're singing songs from the most popular artists that are talking about, I know you have a girlfriend, but I want you anyways, so come over here. And then the message of being an unrighteous, trifling woman, being just shots and getting intoxicated and sleeping with people who don't care about you, or shooting and killing and doing drugs, or whatever the music is saying. It's influencing our subconscious, and then it's influencing our spirit. It truly is. And so I'm grateful that the shift in music is happening. I'm seeing more and more artists every single day who are creating conscious music, and I'm grateful that I get to be one of them.
Beautiful. I got to experience myself the power of music, and I totally forgot about it but when I dove into your world today, it came to me again. I was doing in, I think, 2018, my yoga teacher training. And my best friend in school, I think said like was 13, 12 years to me, where we were singing in choir. He's like, Hannah, please better listen to the others and kind of shut up. So I never sing. I'm not singing. I'm not even singing happy birthday. I'm kind of like just mimicking to sing, but I'm not singing. And when I did my yoga teacher training, you sing like mantras together and so on. And every time when I started just to open my mouth and like voice my voice a little bit, and I started a little bit to sing, like tears were just, I don't know, it opened my heart so much. And I was just, tears were like flooding down my face. And it was like almost a running gag already there, because I was like, no, I don't want to sing. Hannah, come on, sing. And then when I started to, it was like literally, it was just like emotions releasing and releasing. And it was so beautiful and powerful.
Yeah. The voice is a tool. The voice is a portal in a sense. And it is such powerful, powerful medicine to express through the voice, through singing, through mantra, through affirmation, even just through speaking. The power of the voice is so, so profound. And that is one of the major messages that I share with people, is that, like, that's why when you sing a song that you love, that makes you feel good, it brings joy, because it's this movement of energy through us when we utilize our voice. It's this activation in a sense, and it's powerful medicine. It's such powerful medicine.
This is so beautiful, literally. Like this, like what you are sharing with the world is just so special, and your story is just so encouraging. And if somebody's sitting at home, like listening right now, and they feel inspired and encouraged by your story, and they feel like they also have something very special to give, but they don't know how or what it exactly is and how to start and how to pursue it, what would be your advice for us to find our passion? And then once we figured out what we actually truly want, what our heart truly desires, how can we start to pursue this way?
two things that really come up is really get clear on why you want to do this. Are you doing it for your own self-significance or self-validation? Are you doing it to prove something? Or are you truly doing this in the energy of love and pure intentions and the spirit of service to others? So really, really know your why. Know what's fueling you, because that intention and that foundational energy will absolutely be the driving force for you. Because immediately, if we're saying that what we're doing is in the energy of service, but subconsciously it's actually about self, that's when we will stop immediately when we're afraid to look a certain way or afraid to fail, because at that point we're making it about us instead of them, the people who need what we have to offer. So really, really get clear on your why you're doing this, why you want to create this, why you want to help in this way or serve in this way or create in this way, just why. And then the other thing is, don't be afraid to start small. Don't be afraid to have humble beginnings. That is one of the biggest things that stops people, is that they see Tony Robbins doing it. They see, all of these people out there doing it at the high level that they're doing it, at the elite level with their pretty graphics and their amazing branding and their big venues and this large audience. They see where people are at now. But just like me, my first event had 32 women. I mean, I'd say it's still pretty good, but some of my events that I was doing throughout the year when I was doing the monthly free workshops, I had one time where nobody showed up at all, or a time where only one woman would show up. And it was okay, because I was like, I would always tell myself, it doesn't matter how many women are here. We're still gonna facilitate this experience as if the room was full. And the time that, because at this time I had like a team of women that I brought on with me, the time that nobody showed up, I said, all right, we're all gonna do the workshop, just us, this is for us then. We did it. And I was okay with that. And I said, we're still gonna do it next month. It doesn't matter. It's not about me. I don't feel defeated. I'm not taking it personally. They probably just have plans or they didn't align, whatever. We're still gonna do it, because I'm in service. It's not about Melanie. So know your why and do not be afraid to start small. You can absolutely start small with no money, with no budget, just your why and a mission and the joy and excitement of trying something new. I had no idea what I was doing in the beginning. I didn't have a mentor. Nobody in my family had ever done this, like nothing. I figured it all out as I went. And then when I found out there's this huge personal development world with all these coaches, and you can hire people who've been doing this for years and they can teach you how to do it, I was like, wow. I remember when I hired my first coach, I was like, holy moly, this is like a serious, like, expediting process. I wish I would have had you 5 years ago. So don't be afraid to start small. Get the ego out of the way.
Wonderful.
Yeah, because humble beginnings, everybody to some degree has had some form of a humble beginning in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, plus what you're saying regarding, like, okay, even if it's just one person that showed up, like, just imagine you impacted one person so much that that person changed her or his life. Like, that will spread out again. And just, it's like you had an impact on a person's life. This is so powerful. And I think once I myself put myself into this situation or into the mindset of, like, it doesn't matter how many people, just one person. And that was where you just overcome yourself and you just don't care anymore what other people think and so on. You just see your mission and your purpose and you just go for it.
Yeah. That's all you can do.
Absolutely. And I think, like, everything unfolds on the way. You just have to go the first steps. And I literally, like, I experience it right now. It's just miracles start happening once you kind of, like, show the universe, like, I'm ready. I'm going my way.
Yeah. And we hear it all the time is don't get so caught up on the how. The how will reveal itself. The how will get figured out. So don't get so caught up on how am I going to do this? How am I going to raise this money? How am I going to make this happen? How? That's when the how is the mind being in the future. And the future is where anxiety is created when your mind's in the future. So don't get too caught up on the how.
Beautiful. What would you say were your biggest lessons on all, like the wonderful journey you just shared with us? What were the biggest lessons that you would like to share with my audience?
One of the biggest lessons was not doing it all alone. Don't try to do it all by yourself. And maybe you don't have a ton of people who have skills or resources or assets that can help you, but even just having a friend to talk to or having a family member to talk to share a vision with, or finding a mentor to connect with, or finding an entrepreneurial community that gets you. A huge, massive part of my journey was community and collaboration. And it would not have been able to be what it was and grow as fast as it did if I wasn't open to building community and having collaboration throughout my experience. Like, that was one of the most powerful aspects of growing the business and the brand, and having it just become an actual tribe, literally. So collaborate, build community, lean on people, lean on peers. Do not be afraid to ask for support, for help of any kind, and be willing to bet on yourself. You will be surprised what you are actually capable of when you're willing to just bet on yourself. And I have one of my moving mantras. It's actually on Spotify. It's called Growth. And it says, I turn my losses to lessons. I turn my burdens to blessings. And it pretty much says, all of the pain and the stress and everything, it just teaches me what I need to know. It's fertilizer for my growth. So just bet on yourself. And the bet doesn't have to be that you're going to get it right every time, but the bet can be that you'll always figure it out, no matter what. So I would say those are like some of the two greatest lessons. Oh, and one more, the third one, never stop doing your own work. Never stop doing your own work. Sometimes we get so caught up in doing everything for everyone else and serving everyone else that our personal transformation and our own healing and our work takes a back seat. But maintain it just like you maintain drinking water every day and staying hydrated, because that cup needs to stay full and overflowing and inspired, and remaining a clear channel for the things that want to come through you. Keep doing your work. I received a sound bath 2 days ago. I make sure that I go to workshops, that I go to retreats, that I go to events, things that I know my soul needs for its own expansion. I'm always staying in my own work as I'm creating and pouring into others. So keep doing your own work. Never forget to maintain your own practices and your own growth and your own expansion. Create community, lean on community, and collaborate, and be willing to bet on yourself. Those are my three.
Wow, so powerful. Amazing. Before I ask my last two questions, I would like to take a second to acknowledge you. Melanie, literally, you are such an inspiration and such a role model for pursuing our passion. And even if our passion means it is something that was never, ever done before. And I know myself what courage and what bravery it takes to be a light worker. And I would just like to take a second to acknowledge you for that, and for this whole transformation journey you did, and that you're now sharing all your wisdom, all your knowledge with the people, and by doing so, empowering others to do the same. And I really feel like women like you are starting a movement that literally changed the world. So thank you so much for the person that you are and your amazing work, really.
Thank you so much. I truly wholeheartedly received that. Thank you, Hannah. Thank you.
Thank you. So my last question is, let's say you get the wonderful ability to turn back the hands of time and you meet your 18-year-old self, raving, being in music culture, like exactly the person that you described at the beginning of this episode. And you're allowed to share 3 wisdoms with her. What would you say to her?
What would I say to her? 3 wisdoms. Stop questioning your worth. Stop questioning your worth. Stop questioning your value. There's no need to compete. No need to be in competition. And what's the third one? 18-year-old Mel. Just love yourself as you are. Learn to love yourself as you are instead of constantly trying to change yourself to fit into what society says is beautiful or worthy or popular.
I agree 100%. 100%. Mm-hmm. So for every listener who would like to learn more about you, where can we find you?
So everyone can find me mostly on social media platform Instagram. That's where I usually spend most of my time, do most of my posts and my reels and things like that. So my Instagram is at it's Melanie Peralta _. And then other than that, anything that I'm ever doing, from my coaching program to my events, to my music, to my merchandise, can all be found at melanieperalta.com. Everything that I do, my retreats, anything that I'll ever create will be up on my website.
I will link it all in the show notes. And now I just wanted to thank you really from the bottom of my heart. It was such a wonderful and conversation full of love and inspiration and purpose. And you were literally such a light to the world. So thank you so much for taking the time. And thank you so much for sharing all your
I'm so grateful that I got to spend this time with you. Thank you again.
Thank you.
This is amazing what you're creating, this platform. And I'm just really grateful that I got to be a part of it.
Now I would like to hear from you. What was one thing that you learned that you can take into action starting right now? Leave a comment below or hop over to Instagram at Empowering Vibez and leave a comment under today's episode. I hope this served you. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned to hear one of Melanie's amazing moving mantras and never forget to shine your light.